I'm Mike.
I'm Jason.
Welcome to Snake Envy. Spring, for those of you that don't know, here in Utah was a long time in coming. We had a record snow year this year. We broke records that were, about 90 years old for snow. But Jason managed to get out a little bit a couple weeks ago, and then he and I went out just this past weekend. And what did we find?
We found a bunch of garters, wandering garters.
A whole bunch. So we're going to fill you in on that. We've got some field footage, and we'll talk about that here just a little bit as far as a lead up. All right, so first of all, why don't you tell everybody about the conditions that day? Because I know for some in the hobby and probably in some parts of the country, they might not have guessed we'd be out herping in those temperatures late in the afternoon.
Yeah, it was 63 degrees that day. Was it 63?
Air temp, according to my car, give or take a couple degrees, but according to the car, it was 63 out.
Yeah.
Air temperature.
It was cut in the day I went, the week before I went, it was like 60 degrees. And these guys were out basking, and I don't think they were foraging too much, but they were looking to breed. They were chasing females around, and we did find a few. We did find a few mating balls, and a female with about four to five, six males chasing her, trying to get rowdy there. And
we interrupted one, unfortunately, but we got some good footage of the second one. We backed off a little bit, let him be. But what's interesting, we brought the temp gun, and you took two different measurements of the ground temperature in the sun, and tell everyone about that. I was actually surprised it was that high.
So 82?
Well, we took one. The first one we took was 91.
Okay.
And that was in a really sunny spot near where we parked. And then as we got a little further out on the trail, you took another one that came in at 82.
Yeah.
So you're talking about, a good 20-degree difference between the ground temperature. Now, this is late in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Sun's been shining on the ground all day, and the ground's been absorbing it.
Yeah. That basking temperatures, that they can, on a cool day, they can soar. And that's why you don't tend to see snakes in the middle of the day out sunning, and, they're not really... it's funny that people think that reptiles like hot. They're from the desert, and it's not so much.
Yeah, imagine on a 90-degree day, and your ground temperature might be 110 or 115.
They're not in the sun.
They don't want anything to do with that. But there's also a kind of a mini debate in the hobby about belly heat versus heat from above. I've actually seen some pretty knowledgeable, pretty experienced people in the hobby say things like, well, snakes don't utilize belly heat in the wild. Why do you give it to them in their enclosure? But the day we experienced is an absolutely perfect example of why belly heat is important and that they do utilize it.
Yeah, they use the ground temps.
They're out in those sunny spots, and they're taking advantage of the warm ground. And we didn't even measure any rocks. The rocks may have been warmer. And I would also say anybody who's ever been road cruising on a 65, 70-degree night, they're absolutely drawn to belly heat because that's why they're on the road.
Yep.
But anyway, coming up, we'll have that footage for you of our finding a bunch of garter snakes in the spring. Thanks.
Thanks.
What do you got there, Jason?
Wandering garter. And so we have two species here in northern Utah. Wandering garter and a valley garter, and they're very easy to identify from each other. The wandering garter will have some reds in here on the side, some red blotching, and a more vibrant stripe, dorsal stripe.
The valley garters, though, are definitely the more colorful.
Yep.
Red stripes,
sure.
Even some blues.
This is very typical.
And what's interesting is we are only, about maybe an hour's drive from where valley garters would be the ones that we'd be seeing.
Yeah, I drove through that territory this morning.
But an hour further south, and it's exclusively wandering garters. But we have seen probably about 15 this afternoon, would you say? Yep. Maybe even more?
Yep, yeah, Charles Gardens.
This isn't the biggest one we've found. We're likely seeing some spring breeding behavior here. We've got a group of about 5. Looked like there was one good-sized female.
See that rock down below? By the pipe, there's one wrapped around that rock. Yeah, there it is. Good. They're out.
Alright, so we're looking for garter snakes. We're in Utah County, Utah. And for those who may not know, we've had a record snow year this year, so it's end of the first week of April before we're really getting out finding stuff. But Jason found a good spot last week. But one of the things we wanted to talk about was the difference between air and ground temp. As we got out of the car, it was about 63 degrees. What's the temperature here in the sun?
Right here, it is 83.1.
83. So there's often a debate in the hobby about belly heat.
Right,
and
this temperature, this ground temperature is warm. Plenty warm, maybe too warm.
There's some parts of the country where people would say 63, you're not going to find any snakes.
Yeah.
But it's in the 80s. We took a ground temperature reading earlier and it was 91 back by the car. Yeah, so
I imagine if I got some dirt or rocks, it would be more.
The rocks would definitely be even higher. So people who say snakes don't use belly heat in the wild, of course they do.
Yeah, even if it's from the sun, it's still,
Yes. It's coming from the sun, but the ground, it's a little after 3 p.m. So this ground has been warming up all day. We've already seen about 5 garter snakes here along this river.
And yeah, they're not super noticeable, and then you just look around and all of a sudden you see a stick that has some pattern.
But a 20-degree difference between air temp and ground temp. So that belly heat, quote unquote, definitely has them out and about. Here is a wandering garter mating ball. There's a big female in there with about 4, maybe 5 males. This is the second of what looked like a mating cluster that we've seen.